No?
Well, it's a theoretical constraint.
We allow potty breaks.
But it means we can't do that day-long marathon, telethon that we wanted.
Were you going to dance this time, Ruben?
Not if we want anyone to give money.
Well, I was thinking to the piano stylings of your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, to kick this off, we did have a question on Twitter. We posted that people could ask their questions on Twitter, and so this question is: are RFPs, which I'm assuming is requests for proposals, worth applying to if you're a solo freelancer? And then he amends it. Maybe a better question is: what are some strategies for landing RFPs if you're solo?
Don't do them. I think the biggest problem with RFPs is that there's typically somebody on the inside who already kind of has the job, but the organization requires that they get 3 proposals before they can actually commit to one, right? So if you don't know you're the inside person, then it's probably not you. It is the big thing. And it also, like, that's again like coming into from the doctor to the doctor and saying, here's all my problems, what's it going to take to solve them? The doctor just tells you what to do without actually doing any diagnosis. So RFPs are a good basis by which to start a discussion about what the real problems are, but they're not. Yeah, I don't think they're any good for actually doing a good project. And because you never hear about like what are the success rates of all these projects either, right? Like, do they actually turn out well? Do they accomplish the goals or anything like that, or do they just check off some things?
So I mean, I'd heard this also. I mean, it's very typical in Israel for I think by law actually all government, any public thing has to be done in an RFP. And I mean, I toyed with the idea on occasion of maybe applying to them. And then I looked what was necessary in order to apply for government contracts. And the requirements are so onerous, there was just no way that I was going to be able to do all that paperwork. I don't even know if my company fulfilled the requirements. But what Kurt is saying sounds right to me, and I remember hearing this here and there, where basically they have someone they want to do the job, and they will often tune the RFP to that person's strengths. And so you're already coming in 1 or 2 points down because the requirements are A, B, and C, and what do you know? There's a guy who needs exactly A, B, and C, and that's probably not you. That said, I know that there are companies. I mean, at least again in Israel, there are a bunch of large consulting companies that basically make all of their money or most of their money going and doing these large government contracts. So it's possible to have a business model that works that way. But I don't think it's what any of us is necessarily looking for, right? They're going to have a staff that's looking for it. It's going to sort it, find people to put into it, and they're just sort of moving bodies around from project to project, not necessarily looking for something that's really cool or interesting or career advancing.
Yeah, and they'll probably even have someone that's sole job or multiple people whose sole job is to win RFPs. That's it.
That's right.
They're not. Yeah, and see, I just can't compete with that stuff, and I don't. I have a blanket email that basically says, well, what I said before, like, this is a waste of my time. This is you diagnosing every problem and not coming to an expert, and I just don't engage in that. If you'd like to use this as a basis for a proper scoping session to really figure out what your problems are and how we can measure it, I'd love to talk. Otherwise, please take me off your list.
Do you get RFPs to you?
I probably get about 1 a month, and that's all I send back. Like, it's just a blanket. I don't even fill in their name. I just, here you go. This is what you get back. And actually, one guy sent it to me again, like 2 weeks later, and I just wrote back, you already sent this to me. And I replied, I don't do RFPs. Please see my other email.
Well, the other thing is let's say for a second that it's a project where they don't already have somebody picked out, right? So then what they're doing is they're going out and they're trying to get as many bids as possible. They want to get, a wide variety of people bidding all kinds of stuff so that they can feel good about making the decision they're going to make. And then ultimately, you often don't get a real shot at selling it unless you're one of the 3 bottom bids or unless you're telling them something that they really, really, really want to hear. And so why go to somebody that you have to go in and waste a bunch of time putting together a proposal that they're probably only going to look at one number on, and then if they don't, then you still have to go in and sell it against a couple of other folks. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me when you can actually go and nail something in a niche, have people coming to you, build your reputation, and then go out and actually find people. And if you actually need a job right now and you're seeing this RFP, you're still better off going and talking to all the people you know and finding somebody that they know that needs your help.
Yeah, I even had this. I followed up with the client for probably 3 months. It was like a local women's business group, and I followed up with them 3 or 4 months, and over and over and over. And then finally, I got the RFP, and I wrote back and said, "This is kind of sad because I don't do RFPs, and this is basically a waste of my time." That was the short version. I was a little annoyed that time, so I probably made my standard email a little more annoyed. But still, it's not worth it to engage in those at all, really. And you want to be that expert that they're coming to, right? Because like Chuck said, they're looking for that bottom line number. What's the cheapest I can get this, and that's it, walking away. Not who's the expert, who's the best person for this, who's the best fit for us. They're just saying who can we spend the least amount of money with.
Might be willing to. They might be willing to take on who's not the cheapest, right? There is a quality qualifier in there too, but again, I think it's unlikely that it would be any of us. Now, if you have a contact somewhere, like so, my upstairs neighbor for a while was like in charge of the Israeli Army's procurement of ships, right? It's like a nice job to have. Now he does something else, but basically said to me, "Oh, you have your own consulting company, huh? Would you be interested in doing some supplying to the Army?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I'd be interested." She said, "I'll just bring the paperwork by." At least 300 or 400 pages, I kid you not, that I would have had to fill out just to like sign up, so I would be able to participate in their RFPs. At that point, I said, "Okay, this is just not my cup of tea."
Yep. So I think we all agree. Eric, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I mean, I think I've done 2. I can't remember if they were RFPs, but I was the person, like, they did the RFP and they wanted to hire me when they started it. So I don't think I've really applied to many of them. I think I've talked to a couple clients, and then I did like what Curtis had, where you talk to them, get in a sales conversation, and they smack you with an RFP, and I decline and walk away. But the other side of it is, if you are a larger kind of agency or whatever, RFPs can be a good staple because they're pretty consistent. They're out there a lot, and if you do have either one employee or like you dedicate a certain amount of time to actually doing that, and that's part of your sales process, like it might work. But I think you have to kind of get out of the constraints that they put you in. You can't just submit a bid. You have to kind of go above and beyond, whether it's you're talking to the client, like getting into conversations with them so they remember you or whatever. I look at it a lot like when you're going to apply for a job. Like if you just apply for a job and go to the interview like everyone else, you're going to be looked at pretty equal playing field as everyone. But if you send a personal letter, if you try to have coffee with the hiring person, all that, you're going to stand out. And I think it's kind of the same thing with RFPs.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Anything else on that before we go on to the next question? All right. In the chat room, Bravo SC asked, it would be great to get a quick review of how to handle taxes, as well as working with other freelancers and those taxes. And he says he's in the USA, which does make a difference. But
I think some general rules of thumb, though, for everyone is talk to an accountant, figure out how much you're going to pay approximately, and save 5% extra all the time, and more even if you can. So as the dollar's changed between Canadian and U.S., and I get paid mostly in U.S., it's been awesome. But I've also I do the math pretty quick in an application called Solver, which does dollar conversions really quickly. And so I figure out what taxes do I really need to take off this all the time. Because taxes are not a surprise. They are coming, just like death. The government does not let you away with it, and you need to make sure you save for it. That's the biggest overall mistake that I see, and then not hiring an accountant. I've had an accountant since the years I made $8,000 combined with my wife. I'm going to the same guy.
Oh, did Chris just freeze?
Did he freeze for just me?
Must be very cold there.
Yeah, he said exactly what I was going to say. Go to accountant, find out how much you got to put away a little more than that, and then you get a bonus every year when you pay your taxes because hopefully you've saved more than you owe.
But I'm curious, this is maybe this is just the way things work in North America, because in Israel, I basically pay taxes every month. Like my accountant says, oh, you made X, thus you have a monthly payment or sometimes a monthly payment of taxes. And so at the end of the year, I'm just basically paying the difference of what I owed, or sometimes even get a refund if we overestimated.
Yeah, in the U.S. you can pay quarterly taxes. In fact, I think you're supposed to, and there's a penalty for not doing so. But the penalty has never been enough for me to actually go to the trouble of paying it, so I just pay it once every year.
Wow.
I think I think you could do annual or quarterly, but I think it's something along the lines of by October you have to have paid like 80% of your estimates, and if you didn't, then you fall in that penalty. So like you might not need to do quarterly if you don't make enough to hit a certain amount or something. It's screwy, and it's like I pay the penalty the first year, and then I just had my accountant say, like, she just tells me pay this much, and then every 6 months or so she'll update and say, okay, we're gonna readjust, and like in the very end of December, like we'll do some prepayments and stuff like that just to shift tax burdens around. But it's the kind of thing I think I pay her like $500 or $600 a year for all of this and doing the taxes, and it's like the amount of like time I spend doing that is like an hour or two versus like dozens of hours, so it's worth it.
Yeah, that matches up with my experience. My accountant's like $650 when I sit down with them, and
about half of it's a tax write-off too. So
yeah. So
I pay way more than my accountant. Boy, I think I pay probably the equivalent of like $300 a month.
Oh wow.
Plus I pay the to do an annual report for my company. So like the monthly is basically for bookkeeping, and then the annual, which is probably about another, I think like $2,000 or so, is to file a report with the government. It also folds in my own personal taxes, which most people in Israel don't have to do. It's basically if you're rich or if you own a company, which people seem to think is the same thing. Haha, I wish. But by law, I have to have an accountant. I could do my books myself, but then I'd be in so much more trouble. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, are you paying him to do your books and file your taxes and everything else?
Yeah, I basically hand him a drawer full of, or a plastic bag full of paperwork every month, and email him, the bank statements and all sorts of other stuff. Him and the bookkeeper who works for me, and they then get back to me about a week later and say, this is what you owe in taxes for this month. I mean, the different kinds of taxes, and you're missing information on. And there's always a list of things that I was not a good boy about. So it's actually like definitely in my company's interest and in my interest to have someone else doing this. I would just be terrible at it.
Yeah, I find though that if for bookkeeping, if I sit down and do it myself, it takes me a couple of hours every month, which means that if I did it every week, we're talking like a half hour. But the nice thing is that I know where all the money's going, I know what's coming in, all that stuff, and then I can get a better feel for what I need to focus on. And so I think it really depends sort of on what you're doing, because I have money coming in from podcast sponsorships, I have money coming in from other things, and then I have money coming in from the consulting, and so it's a little bit different prioritizing that versus prioritizing one client over another maybe. But yeah, I like to do it because then I know what all the numbers are and I know what's making a difference with what. But yeah, then I give a report to my accountant at the end of the year, and he does the tax thing. One other question that was related to this was subcontractors. So, have you guys hired subcontractors?
I have, and again, the legality, the paperwork are going to be different. But basically, if I have a subcontractor in Israel, then they are exactly like a company. So basically, they give me like a receipt, tax receipt here, and we do tax like the VAT, which is sort of like sales tax, and then I hand that to my accountant exactly as if I bought anything at a store or any sort of good or service. And that gets very, very easy. If someone does not have that, like, and on occasion people have wanted to work with me or I've wanted to hire them, and they've not had that sort of business status. I mean, if it's going to be a long relationship, I'll just hire them as an employee of my company, but that's usually just not worth it for anyone.
Yeah, there are enough requirements on you if you hire an employee in the U.S. to where I just hire subcontractors, because ultimately then I get it, and this is what G. Pickens said in the chat. I get a W-9 from them up front. I send them a 1099 in January. That is if I paid them more than $600, I think is the limit. And then they're responsible for all their taxes, et cetera, et cetera. I have hired subcontractors outside of the country, and if they're out of the country, then I don't actually have to file any paperwork on them. I just have to show that I paid them, and I think I may have to demonstrate that they actually did some work for me. But I mean, that's it, and that's only if I get audited. So.
Yeah, the whole international definitely makes it much more complicated in some ways, but also easier in some ways. Because the moment that you're dealing with people outside of your own country, then your tax authorities are like, well, just show us some paperwork they were doing something for you somewhere, and it becomes much less official, at least in my experience.
Yeah, they generally don't, at least from what I've seen and heard, they're not as strict about that. But then you have to deal with exchange rates and how to wire the money, or send them a check or deposit in PayPal or whatever options you have or don't have, and that depends on the country. But yeah. Right. Anything else to add on that before we answer the next question? All right, let me tackle this one, or read it anyway. It says, all of you are individual freelancers, but some work with subcontractors. What do you think about partnerships? It makes you look bigger when taking on clients, talking to clients, more stability, etc. Do you think the downsides outweigh those positives? Go bigger. Most bigger customers seem to steer away from individuals. Go it alone or find a partner. Thoughts?
I think that comes back again to you being an expert or not, right? I've worked with lots of very large companies who have come to me because I am an expert in their problem currently, and we may end up doing more work, but they come to me because I am the expert first. When they're looking for like a general web shop to do stuff, then yeah, of course they're going to look for bigger shops typically, but I have a specific acute problem, and you solve it. I would like to work with you on this.
Yeah, I have a little bit different experience because most of the big companies that I've worked for, they weren't necessarily going for a particular niche or had a specific niche problem, but so I've worked, to name a few, I've worked for Gannett Press, who owns USA Today, I think, is one of or US Weekly, one of the big newspapers.
USA Today, yeah.
But it was, I was working on a little niche project that they had, and so they really only did need one programmer to maintain it, and they knew that. So, they came to me, and I kind of inherited the project from somebody else who inherited it from Pivotal Labs, which is a large Rails shop. I've also worked with Deseret Book, which you guys probably haven't heard of, but they're a fairly prolific book / religious stuff. They sell paintings and statues and stuff. So it's kind of a religious bookstore here in Utah and Idaho. They're a fairly large company, and I did a bunch of work for them. And it wasn't necessarily that it was specialized; it was just that they knew who I was and knew that I could do it in Ruby. And so I just landed a contract with an insurance company in Austin, and they're fairly large. And again, what happened was I was actually talking on this show about my capability and past building social networks. And so they came to me because I had the expertise, and, I could tell them that I could get it done in the time that they needed it done. And so they're paying me to do that work now. So, what Curtis said is really accurate. If they are confident that you can solve their problem, then you can get those contracts, and it doesn't matter if you look like one guy or a bunch of guys.
Right. That said, and I think what you guys said is basically true. That said, there are definitely times when people have come to me and said, well, exactly as the question said, well, maybe you're an expert and you can help me out, but I just really need to be sure that, the whole hit by a bus problem, that you'll be able to do it fast enough, that, there's enough people involved. And sometimes there is a comfort issue with having more than one person. But I think you have to separate the more than one person from the issue of partnerships. And I almost sort of kind of partnered with someone a number of years ago until I realized what was involved and that I'm hitching myself to them and then to me, and I realized, no, this is definitely not something I want to do. So you can be in business with multiple people and not make it a partnership. And if you're going to do a partnership, I think it should not be because you're going to look bigger or more stable, but because you really, really have a great business interest that this other person can help you with.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm theoretically in partnership, big air quotes, because I like their work and we work well together, but we don't actually like amalgamate our business in any way. I think the big thing that you just said, Ruben, is that they're really just scared. It's not necessarily that it's one person or multiple people. They just somehow think it's safer with multiple people, which may or may not be true, right? There's more bureaucracy or more like people to manage when there's more people as well. So it may or may not be true, but that's really the fear that they have, and that's what you need to work to address so that you can prove that you're not this sudden risk. So I think even going back to what's your processes set up to make sure that you're not this big risk. Is it, we talk weekly, or we talk twice a week all the time? We keep going back, right? We'll do milestones every other week. If you're not happy after 2 weeks, you can find someone else. That's not a problem.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing, when it comes down to it with a lot of these companies, is that, especially this last one, it's like, okay, well, can you get it done, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, what if we need it done faster? And, I just explained to them that I have enough people that I'm connected to who will subcontract for me, some of them on short notice, to where I can ramp up and get stuff done. And, so if you have the answers to some of these questions, then it becomes less of an issue. Other deep thoughts?
Listeners, any more questions before we make up some?
I can steal a question from Entreprogrammers. Basically, it was a question that came in. We were talking about covering it last Friday, but we wound up doing our regular mastermind stuff and talking about our own stuff. And I don't know if we're going to get to this, so I'll jump in here. It's a little bit different. It's talking about putting together a product, specifically a book in a niche that he's not currently well known in. It says, I'm launching an ebook on investment strategy. The problem is I live in the tech world and have no resources in the investment world. And then he talks about email lists, and he says, I don't have a mailing list. Maybe you guys can kick around this question on a future episode. How does one break into a market to launch a product? And this can also apply to finding a niche and breaking into that niche if you're not already in it. So how do you break in? I think writing the book is the wrong place to start, but.
And commenting. So who are the leaders already? Do you know who the 10 leaders in the industry are? Are you engaging with their content, commenting on it, sharing it, so that they start to have an idea at least who you are because you're at least commenting on things? Because when you come out with something and start to announce it and just send them an email, they'll say, oh, that's the dude who comments all the time who's always sharing my stuff. I should at least scan through this more than just send it off to my admin assistant. I was at a conference on the weekend, and that's what they said. I'm trying to remember. I think it's for The Verge now, but one big tech site like that. And they have a commenter who comments on every post and has like good in-depth comments on pretty much everything. And so when, after 6 months or something of them doing that, and they had something to launch, they sent it out, and they got like coverage by like 4 or 5 of the authors there on different aspects of it, just because they actually input in first.
Yep.
Well, in terms of entering, there's entering a niche that you've never done consulting in or that you've never been an authority in. There's entering a niche that you know nothing about, right? So it's not obvious to me which situation they're in.
Well, they're confident enough to write a book in it, so let's assume that they know something about it.
So they need to sort of get the word out. So I think what Curtis said makes a lot of sense, but also they can start writing about it. They can start blogging about it. They can start making comments, make themselves something of an authority, and try to get that word out. Maybe even start a newsletter of some sort. Get a few people who see them as, wow, the person who really knows something about this. But as I've increasingly been learning, a lot of this is a long game that you have to be playing, right? There's no way for this guy to start today and a month from now be an authority. Lots of people are going to jump to read their book. If he blogs for 6 months and engages for 6 months and he has a newsletter for 6 months, then he'll sort of be at the cusp of where he is, where he needs to be for people to, I think, take him seriously and say, oh wow, that's worth reading what he has to say and take it, see it as an authority.
Yeah, and even just pick one to start, right? So maybe blogging isn't your thing, but a twice a week or once a week video of just something that you talked about. Maybe that's the thing that you are best suited to, and as you keep doing that, then you think, oh, I've got more of the content than once a week, so where else can I put this content? And then you start blogging as well. And then with your email list, you may not have one, and the best time is always like before today to start it, but the second best time is today. So just put it up right now. Like get a free MailChimp account and do it, right? Put a landing page together. If you use WordPress or something, then there's lots of landing page themes that are inexpensive. Skip coffee for every day for a week at Starbucks, and you can buy the theme. Though I understand, and you may kill someone at this meantime.
Is Curtis slowing down for
Yeah,
anyone else?
he's fading again.
But
Google doesn't want his secrets to be out.
That's right. Yeah, but I'll just jump in here. I mean, I know what, or at least what I'm hearing him say is that you should be getting involved. You should be, writing blog posts. You should be podcasting or YouTubing or whatever. Yeah, and you don't have to pick. You don't have to do them all. Pick one that works out for you and then go after it. And then, like you, Curtis was saying before, where you actually get in and go comment on those blogs, go tweet at those folks, go interact with them on social media. One other thing that's really paid off for me in a lot of ways is going to events. So I go to a conference about whatever it is and get to know the people there. Sometimes there are some paid communities by some of the people who are at the top of that particular niche, and so you can get involved and then get some certain kinds of exclusive access or notice. And then when you're doing something in that area, then they can actually come in and endorse what you're doing, not necessarily because you're paying them or because they feel like they owe you, but just because they like what you're doing. And just be genuine. That's another thing that I see a lot of people do is they try and break into a niche by pretending to be something that they're not. And if people know where you are, then they will find a good fit for you. Oh, Curtis is moving again.
because he paused Backblaze, which you can't pause when you first restart because it's not running yet. Computers are easy, right?
Did you want to pick up where you left off?
I don't even remember where it was. I think we did good. Get into the niche, support the
Didn't
people.
hear it, but I'm sure it was good.
Start your content now. Pick whichever one you want, right? And then start there. Add the other ones as you can, and start the email list. If it's not started, start it today. That's the best time.
So how
Second
big a
best
list
time
do you
to
need
say.
in order to be able to effectively market to a niche?
That all depends. I mean, it depends what your end goal is. If your end goal is to make millions, then you're going to need a big list, right? You're going to need to be, but you're going to need to be very well known. If your end goal is to get things rolling, because this is a long content game, then like I think I launched my last successful product. Will caveat that because I launched one that wasn't super successful. When I say super, I mean no one bought it. When I launched to another list, like I think it was only like 150 people, and I made a couple $1,000s over a few days, and it was great. And there's been some trickle through sales since then. A bigger list, theoretically, I would have had more people convert as well. Yeah, the story, you're going to hear lots of stories about people who, it's my first product, and I just blogged 5 times about it, and then I launched, and it was awesome, and I made $40,000 in 2 days. But that's only the outliers. You don't hear about the 500 other people who launched something around the same time that made nothing to a couple $1,000s or even a couple $100s. So
Right.
and a good book to read is Authority by Nathan Barry as well.
Awesome. +1 on that book. It's awesome. He does talk mostly though about selling a book. in the book. But it does work for other products. So the other thing that I have heard, though, is that if you write a book on a topic, then it's easier to be perceived as an expert. So can you do it as kind of a jumping off point in order to become better known in that space?
Oh, sure. Right? Even, I'm doing a manifesto that's going to be free for the email list and 99 cents on Amazon when I set it up. And it's just to continue to get my name out there, really, right? And I've actually spent the most more prepping this product than any other product I have before that actually, sold and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What's the manifesto called?
No is not a curse word. A manifesto on running a business.
My kids don't like hearing that word. They scream and yell like it's a curse word.
Oh, yeah. I think it should be out. It's all proofed and ready. I just need to set up some stuff on the site, and it's ready to go. So by the time this goes out, but it's live, so it's not by the time this goes out. By next week, probably.
Awesome. I don't know if I have any other questions that I can pull in.
I mean, I'll just echo briefly a lot of what Chris just said about a mailing list. Like, I've only been taking my mailing list seriously for about a month and a half now, and already I feel like, wow, I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. The responses I've been getting from people have just been overwhelming, and I really feel like there's this audience. I'm connecting with them. I'm hearing from them. It's helping me to sell my book. Like, it's been inspiring and exciting on all possible levels, as well as somewhat profitable. People have been leaving, but that's okay. But other people have been coming in. I feel like over time it's not going to grow, but it's going to grow to be a group of people that I can sort of rely on for feedback, and that I can obviously pitch things to over time. So it's definitely something to try, and it's not nearly as good as you would think.
Yeah, and then even for your calls to actions, like having 2 or 3 of them. So right now I have one at the top of my site, and that almost doubled the people I was getting in, and I have a slide up one at the bottom. And I know every developer groans at pop-ups, but pop-ups convert very well. So finding a good unobtrusive pop-up is a good idea if you can stomach the fact that you probably hate seeing them anyways.
I actually put those on my blog recently, and the thing at the bottom of the page seems to actually have had some effect. Not huge, but something. But the pop-up had 0 effect. So I think I must just have very intelligent Snooty users, or enough of them to make a difference.
The other thing is even looking at guest posting on sites, right? I know Brian Cassell launched something a while ago, and he posted on Michael Hyatt's site, and he got 300 or 400 email subscribers from the one post. So I may be off my numbers. He got a lot at least, and he blogged about it a few weeks later when he did his launch recap. That was probably 2 or 3 months ago, if you go to his site.
Yeah, the guys at Lead Pages also tell you to put lead magnet into the, so you're telling people, hey, if you sign up for the list, you get this. What was that?
The byline, at the very end, the bio. It's called the byline. Typically, I think from newspapers.
Yeah, and then one other thing that so I've gotten to get to know the guys on Entreprogrammers quite a bit better since I've been talking to them every week for the last few weeks. And Josh Earl actually has a series on, and it's another email course series on doing a giveaway to build your list. And he built a pretty massive list. I'm pretty sure it's in the high tens of thousands of people on his list by giving away, I don't even remember what he gave away, but he gave away something on the, it was kind of so only a few people got the prize or whatever it was, but anyway, so they gave it away and they built a massive list by doing that. And so that's another idea. There are a lot of ways to get people to subscribe to your mailing list, and then if you can keep engagement high and the value high on the list, then you can keep them engaged to the point where they'll start buying things from you.
Yeah, I do. I guess my current lead magnet is like the 5 best pricing resources I found, and that'll become the manifesto when it comes out. And then every month I also give away the best business book I read that month. I give it away for free to someone. So that's not a huge expense really, and I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 months. And I asked, like, you gotta email me to answer a question, right? So I'm asking, I did good to great. What's your hedgehog concept? Which is something out of that book. Where I explained it a little bit to them first, and then ask them for that. And I always say before I'm about to give it out, I always tweet about it, and usually 2 or 3 people subscribe just before I send it out, so that they get an opportunity to win it still.
All right. Well, should we go ahead and do some picks?
Sure.
Eric, do you want to start us off with picks?
Yeah, so trying to find it. So this is called Launch, a startup documentary. It's Rob Rawling and Derek Bremer. They basically started Get Drip, which is a email marketing, email automation subscription SaaS product. And this is it's like a 2-hour podcast type thing, but they had, I guess, weekly kind of business calls of reviewing what's going on, changes in their customer, changes in feature set. And so they recorded that and basically put it all together into one 2-hour segment. And I actually listened to it last night. It was actually really great, so I kept listening to it, stayed up a little late. But it's really interesting because you can kind of see the evolution of a software company from here's the very beginning of an idea and how it gets changed and how there's an emotional up and down roller coaster as stuff happens or they find out new information. But it's interesting. It's free. It's on iTunes and all that. And I use Drip. I was actually remember many of those different times Rob's talking about indecision. I remember talking to him about some of that stuff. So it's kind of a pretty cool thing to see what he was actually thinking on his side. And that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love Rob, and Drip is really cool. So, Curtis, you have some picks for us?
Pick 2. First one is The Best of Art of Value, the podcast. That's episode 26, and he recaps all the things he did last year and kind of the best answer from each guest for the year. It's a good one. Lots of value packed into still long because there's a bunch of guests, but into a short time frame with lots of value. And then a book called Quitter, which is about not quitting your job actually. It's about one of the good themes in there is hanging on to that job a little longer so that you don't jump into it too soon and it collapses under your weight because you don't actually have the business running yet. It's just kind of a hobby still. These are both good resources for you to learn how to price and to just hang on to your full-time job if you're trying to get at freelancing. Or even if you are freelancing, hang on to that project that you want to run on the side just a little longer and don't commit to it fully yet. Wait till it's fully matured.
Yep. You folks in the chat room, if you have resources you want to share, we'll shout them out too. Reuven, do you have some picks for us?
Yeah, I got a pick for this week. So I had a Samsung Galaxy for about 3 years, and then for the last 3, 4, 5 months, it was just going totally crazy on me. It would refuse to answer calls, refuse to make calls. The sorts of things that you occasionally want your phone to be able to do. And so I checked with a friend who knows a fair amount about mobile stuff, and he said, well, if you've got friends or family coming from the U.S., there's this new cheap phone that's actually pretty good. And I got it, and it's only 6 weeks in, but I got a blue phone, blue from BLU. Put the wrong chat to put it in. I'll put it elsewhere. So we put it in the show notes. But I got the Blue Life, Blue Life 8, I think it's called, something like that. And basically, Blue Life 8 unlocked. And it's, on the one hand, a simple Android phone. It does all the Android things you would expect, but it was only $170. So my feeling is, even if it's a total piece of junk and disintegrates in a year, it's still going to cost me less to buy one of these every year than it would to buy a new Galaxy, whatever the latest number is, every year to keep up with the Joneses, or just be able to make calls on my phone. So it's definitely worth checking into. So far, it's obviously have a slightly cheaper, or even much cheaper manufacturing tolerances and thresholds of the other ones. The headphone jack's a little loose, and the 3G could be a little better. But
You're totally selling it to me right there.
yeah, Eric writes, it shocks you when it rings. No.
I'll put some tape on it too, and
no, like it's a tin can and a piece of string for emergency calls. No, I'll tell you, like, I mean, I use my phone and I even use it a fair amount, but I'm definitely not like a super crazy phone user. And so for my purposes, with a few apps and just being able to get mail here and there and listen to podcasts like this one, then it's more than adequate, and I definitely got good value for the money, at least for now. You can ask me another 6 months when it starts to fall apart or when I need to use more tape.
So you're an Android user. Do you listen to podcasts on it? I'm curious to know what podcast app you use.
I do. So I use this thing called Double Twist, which I'm pretty happy with, and it basically syncs to iTunes because I have a Mac on my desktop. So I download all the podcasts on my desktop, and then I got their paid add-on because I was tired of moving USB cables all the time. I got a paid add-on that syncs between the phone and iTunes when I'm on Wi-Fi or on my network at home. I found that to be more than adequate. One of these days, maybe I'll use something that will do podcasts on Android itself. But the ones that I've tried have all been pretty lousy in terms of downloading it and using it there. And besides, I want to have it on my computer to listen to as well as on the phone.
Right.
So that's been fun.
All right. I've got a pick really quickly, and this is in line with what we were talking about as far as being an authority, and that is John Sonmez, who's been on this show. He has a blogging course. It's an email course. It's free. And so if you go to that link and you sign up, then you'll get a series of emails that basically walk you through setting up a blog that you can use to build your career, build some notoriety in a particular niche. And it's a really good course. Really enjoyed it. So that's my pick. And I didn't see any shout-outs from the audience, so I guess we'll wrap up. And we will definitely announce this better next time.
Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
ciao.
See you guys.